Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today I'm going to be doing some Magikey test hands. I'm really excited to show you guys because this was actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Wulffner. And this deck is a really amazing deck that can use just about every single summoning mechanic in the entire game, which is really amazing. I love the way the deck plays and it has some really good combos in this particular build. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name in the description of a single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting your request to deck profile every single month you're a patron along with test hands. And definitely give Wulffner some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. So let's get straight on into this. So this deck is a really awesome deck that revolves around summoning out all sorts of different cards. The only summoning mechanic that this deck actually doesn't use is Pendulum. It uses normal monsters, effect monsters, ritual monsters, fusion, synchro, XZ, and even some tech link monsters into this deck as well to basically play every single mechanic, but it revolves around a normal monster, which is our copy of Sky Blaster, which is a very neat card for this deck to revolve around. So let's go ahead and give this deck a quick pile shuffle and see what we can do for our first test hand, because as you guys know, you gotta pile shuffle. It is dad rule number one, because if you don't pile shuffle, you might brick. And this deck does play quite a few normal monsters. You do want to see some of them in your opening hand, but you don't want to see a whole bunch of them in your opening hand. So make sure that as you're playing with this deck that you are pile shuffling. It can make some pretty insane boards though in play testing this deck. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for our first test hand. And there's multiple routes to actually go in this particular build. So we're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck and let's see what we can do. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of the Sky Blaster, a copy of Gamma, which is always good to see, Rescue Rabbit, a copy of McMusket, and a copy of Despot 01. Now you don't have to go in for Auroradon right off the bat. There are some very simple plays that you can actually go in for with this particular hand. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. So you actually have a protection in hand, which is really nice with this particular setup. I really like that, having that Gamma in my hand, because it's going to help me out in the long run of things. So we're going to go ahead and just normal summon out a copy of Rescue Rabbit, and it has the ability that can't be special summoned from the deck, and you can manage this card to special summon 2 level 4 lower normal monsters with the same name from your deck, but destroy them during the end phase, which is going to help us get into a rank 4 play. So we're going to go ahead and use this card and banish it. Now let's say that our opponent Ash Blossoms us in the middle of our combo while we're using the copy of Rescue Rabbit, which is why I play the copies of Gamma in the deck, because it can protect cards like your field spell, it can protect your Rescue Rabbit, it can even protect Unexpected Die, which is really helpful for this particular deck. So let's go ahead and say that our opponent Ash Blossomed us, and we're going to use that to summon out a copy of Gamma and a copy of Driver. Now you have a couple of different options to actually go into, depending on what you have in your hand. You can actually go for the copy of the Sky Blaster, or you can go for my personal tech card in this deck, and that is the Megalo Smasher. Megalo Smasher is a really good card to actually summon off the copy of Rescue Rabbit, because you have some very unique plays that you can actually pull off with this card. So just right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and say that our opponent did Ash us, so they're down by 1 card, and then we're going to overlay both of these monsters on our side of the field, and we're going to summon out a copy of Evil Tsar Dolka, which is kind of surprising just to throw out a copy of Dolka against our opponent, because it just requires 2 dinosaur monsters, which are copies of our Megalo Smashers are, which is really good. The effect of the Dolka also has the ability that during either player's turn when a monster effect is activated, you can detach a material from this card and negate the activation. If you do, destroy that card, which is super helpful just to give us additional negations. And then you can synchro these 2 monsters away to summon out a copy of a synchro monster, which we're probably going to summon out the copy of the Psyframe Lord Omega, just to rip another card out of our opponent's hand, which is super helpful because now we just get to basically be able to take a card out of our opponent's hand. And they've already hand trapped us, which is really good, because now they're down to 3 cards. They start with 4 when they draw, which is really good, because then you can just get rid of this and get rid of a card on their field. And then you also have 2 negates on the copy of Dolka, which is just really insane. So if they pass back to us and we get our copy of our Psyframe Lord Omega back, we're going to draw into another copy of Rescue Rabbit, which we can then normal summon and then banish it as well to summon out our copy of our Sky Blasters from the deck to go go in for even more plays, which is going to help us out a lot. And this is some of the most simple plays that you can actually do with the Magikey cards, is you can just basically summon out your copies of Rescue Rabbit and protect it with your copies of Gamma. And then you can just use these two monsters to overlay with one another, make your copy of the Spirit, and then the copy of Spirit will let you add a level 4 higher normal monster from your deck to your hand if you want to. You can summon out that card to your side of the field. You can summon out your copy of number 60. You can summon out Daigusto Emerald, or you can even OTK your opponent by summoning out Utopia Double, detaching a material from it, and then searching Double or Nothing from the deck to be able to OTK your opponent, especially with that copy of Dolka and Omega backing it up, and then make your copy of Utopia on top of it, attack your opponent with it because it comes out at 5,000, detach the material, drop Double or Nothing, and then you've OTK'd your opponent with this deck. Basically, it can do everything in the entire game. I love the way that Magikey plays, because you have all those different insane plays that you can go into. So let's go ahead and do another test hand and see what we can pull off. As you guys can see, you can go into some really fun plays, especially with Rescue Rabbit in this deck, because Rescue Rabbit is just such a good card in this particular build, because you're able to go in for those really, really nice plays like what I just showed you, where you can go in and just summon out a Rescue Rabbit, back it up with a Gamma, get a copy of Dolka if you want to, and get a copy of Omega, and it catches your opponent way off guard because they don't know that they're actually going to get Gamma'd, and it's going to rip a hand trap out of their hand, rip a regular card out of their hand, and then you're going to put 2 negates on the field as well, especially depending on what else you throw on the field with it. Is just really, really helpful. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next one. So for the next one, we're drawn to a copy of Ash Blossom, a copy of Megalo Smasher, the copy of Mick Musket, a copy of Maftia, and a copy of our Gamma, which is totally fine. We have an okay setup in our hand. You don't have the craziest plays, but you still do have some really interesting ones, because the effect of the Maftia has the ability that you get to fusion or ritual summon a monster, which is pretty good. And if you control a normal monster, you can send a monster from your deck to the graveyard to resolve it. So you still have some pretty neat plays that you can go into with this particular setup. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon out the copy of Megalo Smasher on our side of the field, which is going to help us out a lot, because then you're going to use the copy of Maftia on our side of the field to ritual summon out the copy of Mick Musket. Now you're going to send from your deck to the graveyard. This is going to be the Auroradon combo that you're going to be doing with this particular setup. You don't have to do this. You could go for the regular, the XZ play and the Synchro play for the deck if you want to, but this is a really neat play that you can go for instead if you do so choose, which is what's really neat about this deck, is there's so many different ways that you can go. So then we're going to summon out the copy of Mick Musket, and Mick Musket is a really neat card because it has the ability that when it's ritual summoned using Maftia, if this card is ritual summoned, you can add a Magikey card from your deck to your hand. So we can add any Magikey card that we want, which we're actually going to grab a copy of Magikey Whirl, which then we're going to activate the copy of the Magikey Whirl, and once we do, we're going to search from the deck a copy of a Magikey monster, which is going to be our copy of the Magnificent Magikey, which is a really awesome card for us to actually grab. Now keep in mind, we have already normal summoned for the turn, but the effect of the Magnificent Magikey will help us out a lot, because it's going to actually get us an additional normal summon. This card is super good because it has the ability that you can, if you, it has the ability that you can reveal this card in your hand, and you can normal summon one Magikey monster during your main phase in addition to your normal summoner set if you control a Magikey monster, which we do. So we're going to go ahead and reveal this card to our opponent, and once we reveal that card to our opponent, we're going to get that additional normal summon at any point that we want during the turn. But now let's go for our Auroradon play, because we don't want to clog up our field. So we're going to go ahead and link these two together on our side of the field and summon out that copy of our Needle Fiber. The Needle Fiber is going to summon to our side of the field, and we're going to do the basic play where we're going to summon out the copy of Despot 01. And once we summon out that copy of Despot 01, I'm just going to put that copy of Coltwing on the bottom. We're going to summon out that copy of Despot 01. We're then going to link these two away, and we're going to summon out the copy of the Auroradon to our side of the field. Once we summon out that copy of Auroradon, the copy of Auroradon will go off, giving us 3 tokens on our side of the field, which is going to help us out a lot just to go into some additional plays. And then we can use the effect of the Despot 01 to bring itself back to your side of the field. We can then synchro these two away, because this is a level 3 token on our side of the field, to go in for a synchro monster of a Herald of the Arclight. So we're going to put that card right down there, and then we can use the Auroradon's effect. We're going to put a dice on top of that just to remember that we've used it, and we're going to go ahead and tribute these 2 tokens on our side of the field, so then we can special summon out our copy copy of Colt Wing. Now that we've summoned out our copy of Colt Wing, we're going to get 2 more tokens on our side of the field, and the Colt Wing is going to be a level 10 currently, which is not going to come up all that much right now, but it will later. We're then going to use the effect of the Despot 01 to revive itself, and then we're going to synchro away these monsters that are on our side of the field, and then we're going to summon out the copy of the FA Dawn Dragster, which is really good to summon out to our side of the field because the Dawn Dragster is just going to get us even more negations on our field. Now at this point, this is where you usually end with your Auroradon combo, unless you want to extend a little bit more. But don't forget, we have our normal summon in our hand of our Magnificent Magikey. So we're going to summon out the copy of the Magnificent Magikey, and it has a unique ability that if you control a Magikey monster, you can reveal it in your hand, which we did with McMusket, and then you can normal summon a Magikey monster during your normal summoner set this turn. But it also has a very unique effect that when this card is normal summon, you can target a level 4 or lower monster in your graveyard and then special summon it, or a Magikey monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So we're actually going to special summon back from the graveyard a copy of the McMusket to our side of the field because the McMusket was properly ritual summoned, which is really, really good. So at this point, you can then synchro away the copy of the McMusket and your copy of your Herald of the Arclight to the graveyard to go for a level 8 synchro monster in the form of your Borreload Savage Dragon way down here. We can then use the effect of the Borreload Savage to give it the copy of the Needle Fiber, giving it 2 additional negations, and the copy of the Herald of the Arclight will actually give us a search of a ritual spell or a ritual monster, which we're actually going to search out a ritual monster from the deck in the form of our copy of the Mortar, which is going to help us out a lot to get that copy of the Mortar to our hand, which is just really good. McMortar is a great card to actually get because now we can use the copy of the Magikey World that we have on the field to grab a copy of Maftia from the deck to be able to then put another card on the bottom of the deck that we don't really need anymore, like that copy of Gamma that's not going to do us super good while we have all of these other cards. Now it does go to the bottom of the deck, but that's not that big of a deal that it is going to the bottom of the deck, because at this point you can then use the copy of the Maftia in your hand, and it has a really, really good effect that you can then ritual summon if you want to, but we can also do another play if we'd like to go a different route. If you want to, you can actually synchro these 2 monsters away to go in for an additional synchro play, but you have to go in for a Magikey, you can't actually go there because these actually require a normal monster. So we can actually just use the copy of the Maftia. If you want to use the copy of Maftia to ritual summon out your copy of your Glass Cannon, which is really good, or the copy of the Mortar, which is really, really good because it has the ability that it gains 300 attack for each attribute in the graveyard, and if you use 2 materials that are 2 different attributes, then it gains the ability that quick effect, you can negate the activation of a monster and destroy that card, which is really good to be able to do. So we're going to use that copy of the Maftia, and it also has the ability if you ritual summon, you can send a monster from the deck to the graveyard as well. So we're going to send an additional normal monster from the deck to the graveyard in the form of the Sky Blaster, just to get us a little bit more of a deck then. And we're going to ritual summon using the copy of the Colt Wing, and then ritual summon out the copy of the Mortar to our side of the field, which now we got to count how many different attributes we actually have. We have 1 wind, we have dark, light, and we have earth and water. So we actually are really only missing fire in the graveyard because we have all the other pretty much attributes in the grave. So this card is actually going to be gaining like 1,500 attack points because you have all these different attributes in the graveyard that we actually used. So you can put it in attack mode and put it that it's got 5 different attributes, which is really good. And we did use 2 different attributes to summon it, so you have that going for you as well. So basically you've established multiple negates on your side of the field. You have an Ash Blossom and you have all this really insane board, which is what's really cool. Now you can go other routes with the deck, which is totally fine, where you just summon out your copies of your Omega, or you summon out your other copies of your other cards, which I will show you guys those other combos now. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for our next test hand. As you guys can see, this deck does some really insane stuff, and I really love the way that it plays. It's a really fun deck. Like, I really love it, and there's no card in it that I believe is more than like $3. $2 in the main, making it a fairly budget deck to actually pick up, which is what's really neat about it. I really love the way that it plays. So let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck again and see what we can pull off, because as you guys can see, the deck does do some crazy stuff. I'm really glad that Wulffner actually suggested this, because this deck is crazy and it's fun too. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next test hand. So we're going to go ahead and draw for turn into a copy of, oh, excuse me, we didn't put the copy of the world back in the deck, so we got to shuffle again. That's something that always messes me up, as the field spell. So let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck again. I'm glad I caught that. So we're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck again, go ahead and cut the deck, and let's see what we can get for the next one. So we're going to get a copy of Rescue Rabbit right off the bat, Unexpected Die, a copy of Angel Trumpeter, Ash Blossom, and a copy of McMusket, which is totally fine. That's a pretty good setup right off the bat, because you can go in for some pretty decent plays with this setup. So you can go ahead and activate the copy of Unexpected Die, and if your opponent does stop this, that's totally fine. If they do stop it, you can still go in for plays later on. So this is fine, and it's kind of just Ash Blossom bait as well, which is totally fine for our setup. So we can then normal summon out the copy of Rescue Rabbit, which if they didn't Ash Blossom it, you would get like 3 different cards on your side of the field, which is just pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and use the copy of the Rescue Rabbit in our hand, and then we're going to go in for that very, very simple play where we're going to summon out the copy of the Double O Megalo Smashers, and then we're going to overlay both of them for the copy of our... where is it? Our copy of Dolka, which is going to help us out a lot. You can summon out a different card if you want to. You can, instead of summoning out the Dolka, if you feel like you can dig in the deck to grab something, you can summon out number 60 in its place and then detach a material from it, or detach both the materials from it, excuse me, and then draw 2 and discard 1, which is an option for you. You can just go for the other card, which is a better option in the long run, unless you have follow-up plays. So that is an option for you guys if you want to, but I just usually like to establish the Dolka, especially since I have the Ash to stop searching in my hand. So that's a very simple setup if you're trying to go in for a simple hand. But let's go ahead and see what we can do with another test hand and see what we can pull off. Because as you guys can see, the deck works really well, and there's some simple plays that you can go into in the deck where you're just trying to go in for your Magikey cards that you're trying to summon from the extra deck as well. So let's go ahead and draw Rescue Rabbit, Advanced Ritual Art, Magikey World, Rescue Rabbit, and a copy of Magikey World. This is not bad. You have multiple copies of Magikey World, which is going to get you multiple searches. We're going to go ahead and activate that copy of the Magikey World, and it's going to let us grab any Magikey monster that we want from our deck to our hand, which I'm actually going to grab the copy of McMusket. McMusket's going to be our best option here to be able to grab. We're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck really quick, even though we're going to go right back in, because we're going to use the copy of our Advanced Ritual Art. And once we use the copy of the Advanced Ritual Art, we're going to send from our deck to the graveyard the copy of the Sky Blaster to ritual summon out our copy of the McMusket, which is then going to get us a search of the copy of the Magnificent from our deck to our hand, which is going to help us out a lot. We haven't even normal summoned yet, so we can reveal this card in our hand to get that additional normal summon and revive back this copy of our card to our field. And we still haven't normal summoned, so now we can normal summon. So we're going to normal summon out the copy of Rescue Rabbit, and we're going to tribute that card on our side of the field. And once we tribute that Rescue Rabbit, we're going to summon out 2 copies of Megalo Smasher X, which is one of my favorite tech cards in this deck to be able to summon. I don't know if you guys can tell, but it gets you into that Dolka, and that Dolka is just strong. So we're going to go ahead, and now that we have a completely full field, and it's just really amazing, let's go ahead and see what else we can do. So you can actually use the copy of our the copy of the Magikey World if you want to be able to put that copy of Rescue Rabbit on the bottom of the deck and grab that copy of Maftia and add it back to your hand, which is pretty good. And then you have some really neat plays that you can go for from here. You can go for the Auroradon combo here, but it's not going to benefit you because you're going to have too many zones occupied to be able to go for it. So let's go ahead and do something a little bit different, which is what I wanted to show you guys about this deck, is that you have multiple different routes that you can actually go. So let's go ahead and overlay both of these monsters down here on top of one another and summon out that copy of Dolka to our side of the field. Now that we've summoned out that copy of Dolka to our side of the field, you can actually... let's wait. Let's not summon that copy of Dolka yet. Let's do something a little bit different. Let's go ahead and synchro these 2 monsters together on our side of the field, which are 2 Maybe these two. Let's go with these two right here, because they're both tuners, and you have to have two different attributes for the copy of the Fiend. So we're going to summon out the copy of the Magikey Fiend, which is just a really good card to summon to our side of the field, and it just helps out a lot because this card is a very unique card, because it has the ability that if you have at least two attributes, you can set a Magikey spell or trap from your deck to your spell and trap card zone. So we're actually going to use that effect to grab that copy of Magikey Locking, which gives us a counter trap as well, which is pretty good to be able to grab that copy of the counter trap so we can go even further with this deck. So we're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck now. If you want to leave that copy of Miss McMusket on your side of the field, you can. Or if you want to make a rank 4, you can do that as well. It's kind of totally up to you what you do at this point. You can fusion summon, you can XZ summon, you can go in for another synchro play. It's totally up to you where you go with this particular setup. Usually I like to go ahead and just summon out the copy of the Dolka, because now I have multiple cards backing me up, which is what's really cool, because now you have the copy of the Magikey Fiend and you have the copy of the McMusket, because McMusket is going to have that extra added effect where you get to shuffle cards back, and the copy of the Fiend now has resolved, and it has a really neat effect that if you use at least 2 materials from it, you get to set that Magikey spell or trap to your side of the field. And if your opponent does summon a monster, normal or special summon a monster with the same attribute as a card that's in your graveyard, you can destroy that card, which we have Light, Dark, and Earth, which is the most used attributes in the entire game. And you also have a Magikey Locking, that when your opponent activates a spell or trap, well, you control a Magikey ritual monster or a Magikey monster special summon to your field, you can actually destroy the card and then declare an attribute, and all the monsters become that attribute, which is really good on your opponent's side of the field. So we have 2, 3 negations on our side of the field with a pop of a disruption with this. So you have a pretty good setup with this right here. And if we go into the next draw, we're going to draw into another copy of the Magikey World, which we're going to tag out the copies of the Magikey World to search from the deck another copy of the Magnificent, which is then going to be able to reveal itself in your hand. And then you get an additional normal summon. So we're going to normal summon it out to our field, revive back the copy of the Sky Blaster, and then overlay both of these, because you do have to go for Magikey cards when you use the copy of the Magnificent, which is only downside. And we're going to summon out the copy of the Spirit to our side of the field. And once you summon out that card, you can actually detach a material from it to give you an additional search of a normal monster from the deck, which we're going to search out a copy of our Sky Blaster, which we are now going to normal summon to our side of the field. And then once we do, you can then synchro these two together or overlay these two or whatever you really need to do. If you want to just summon these two on top of one another, you totally can, and summon out that copy of Utopia Double, detach that material off that copy of Utopia Double, search that copy of Double or Nothing, and being able to OTK your opponent by summoning out the copy of Utopia on top of it to get you even more plays and more OTKs by attacking and then dropping the Double or Nothing to OTK with all of this stuff backing you up as you go, which is what's really nice about this deck. I think I've successfully showed you guys exactly how this deck works. I love the way that it plays. There's so many different lines that you can go. Some hands you will get where you're just going to summon out a copy of Dolka and just pass, but there's a lot of different routes that you can actually go, and there's a lot of different ways that you can play the deck, which is what's really cool. You can, instead of playing the Dolka, you can play a copy of Bahamut Shark, and you can play Totally Awesome in the extra deck. You don't have to play the Utopia Doubles. I just really like the Utopia Doubles because they help out a lot in the deck in the long term of things, and it's why I play them in this particular build. So I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come part of Notification Squad. Tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below. And if you guys would like to check out the deck profile, it is down in the description, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.